So, kind of went through some of the things we've discussed. Any questions about any of the things that you saw?
Yeah, just a random question. In dealing, okay, like say the tub, but in terms of like say a hot tub, can you still go in those now? Right?
No, we don't recommend you use hot tubs just because the temperature of the water is too high. Now, if you have a tub at home that has jets in it, if you have the water at a cooler temperature, that's fine. So ideally, you want the tub water to be roughly body temperature or a little bit warmer, because we don't want to overheat while we're in the tub, and especially going through labor, because we all know if we get a bit overheated, it's quite uncomfortable.
Okay.
And a lot of this is kind of when you're at home and when you get to the hospital.
Yeah, so this is all different things that you're going to do to help cope with the discomfort that you're having. Now, if you have medication, a lot of these coping mechanisms will change just because the medication you may be given either doesn't allow you to do these things because of an epidural per se. You're going to be in the bed because you can't get up and walk and move around and change positions per se. And with regards to some of the narcotics, a lot of women will complain that doesn't necessarily take your pain away, it just makes you a bit high, or really high. And because it can upset your tummy. Personally, I try to steer mummies away from actually having the injection. There's times that it's useful, but oftentimes the side effects are just so much worse for a mum that it's not worth it to me. Personally, I'd rather suffer through the pain than have those uncomfortable feelings or possibly having that nausea or even vomiting while having extreme pain just doesn't work well for me. So it's also knowing what you're comfortable with. If you're somebody that's really sensitive to medications, it might not be the best choice for you, but depending on where you're at in your labor, it is a better choice sometimes than going right to the epidural, because the epidural can actually slow your labor process. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So we've made it through that first stage of labor. So chances are, if you're at that active stage, you've maybe called your doctor, you've maybe made it to the hospital because those contractions are getting to be a bit more extreme. Usually your active labor can last roughly 4 to 12 hours. Everybody's different. Some people this might be very short as well. It depends on your body and how you are progressing. So this is when your cervix is going to be mostly effaced. You could be 100% at this point, or between 80 and 90% effaced. The cervix is going to dilate from 4 to 7 centimeters, and this is that little diagram that I had for you guys. So when you start, you're in the middle at basically 0 to 1. So you're going to then get from here to the second outer line, basically. That cervix is going to open up, that last bit. Contractions are going to be regular. They're going to be coming kind of every 3 to 5 minutes, and they're going to last for roughly 45 to 60 seconds. The baby is going to start moving deeper into your pelvis, so you might be getting more of a pressure feeling down in your bottom, in your vagina area, and just down kind of throughout your whole pelvis region. Women usually cannot talk through their contractions at this point. When you are in active labor, those contractions are intense, and they're going to need your attention. So you might be carrying on a conversation with the midwife or your doctor, your partner, another support person that's there, and that contraction comes on, and you just take a deep breath and you go through the various things that have been working for you. So it might be just doing deep breathing, you might be doing some of that imagery, you might be swaying, moving, there might be some moaning, but you're not going to be able to continue to talk to somebody or do what you were doing before, because you need to focus on what's going on so that you cope through that contraction. So the emotions that a woman and a partner can start to feel at this point is you're going to be a bit more serious, because, well, this is not fun and games anymore. There's a baby trying to make its way into the world. Your full attention is going to be on what's going on. People chatting around you, asking you random questions, chances are you're going to get a little annoyed potentially at this point, because you really need to stay focused on what you're doing. You might start to feel a bit tired, especially depending on how long your first stage of labor was, and or that early first labor and how you were coping with it. You know, if it was really quite uncomfortable for you, you were having trouble sleeping, it had been going on for a few days, you may really be getting tired out right now. And each one of those contractions does take energy out of you. And so the longer this stage goes, you can feel tired. You can start to get a bit discouraged because it's like, oh my God, how much longer is this going to be? Like, this is really more than I thought it was going to be. And, you know, when is this going to be over? Start losing confidence, you know, especially if you are feeling a little more uncomfortable, if you were hoping for a more natural delivery without as many medical interventions or pain medications, you know, if you're starting to get to that point of like, I don't know, I really think I'm gonna, you know, I just can't do this. It's okay to have those feelings, it's normal, but just knowing that they're possibly going to be there can help you a little bit. So the physical signs that you're going to have is that those contractions are demanding your full attention. And that's usually a pretty key point to recognize. Like if you can't just kind of keep going about your day and doing things when a contraction happens, you're getting into that active phase of labor. You might retreat inwards just because, you know, that's what you do to cope with the pain. It's very common you might be a bit irritable at this point. You're going to walk slower. Your movements in general are just going to be slower. You know, if you are trying to walk around to, you know, get labor going, it's not going to be a, okay, let's go for a walk. It's going to be a very slow, dramatic, you know, hips opening, rocking back and forth. Leg pains are common. Sometimes we'll just get cramps randomly. So staying hydrated can help relieve that. Your water might break at this point, might not too. Less aware of your surroundings, and that kind of goes back to that kind of retreating inwards. You really don't care what's going on around you. You're just trying to relax to get through what's going on. You may have some more bleeding, and that's simply as everything is opening up, you may have a bit more blood loss as opposed to that early sign where it's that what we call bloody show. So it may just be when you go to the bathroom, you know, your wife can get a little bit. This, you might have a bit of bleeding. There might be some nausea. A lot of women, really common, especially as they're strongly in active labor, will get quite nauseous, and the closer they actually get to being fully dilated, they may actually vomit. It's common to have some shaking that will take place during this stage of labor as well, and in transition, and even right after delivery, women can quite dramatically have some shaking, and you can also have backache, depending on the position the baby's in. This is a good time for pain medication if you need it, because depending on how you're coping and how your body is actually progressing, this is an appropriate time. In those early stages of labor, if you intervene too much with pain medication, it can actually stop or slow down your labor dramatically. So if you're kind of in those early stages of labor and you have had to make your way to the hospital because you're not coping with the discomfort, they may encourage you to do the gas or a narcotic such as the Pepidin and Gravol. Because with an epidural, it takes all of your pain away, basically, if it works properly. And when that happens, your body is not releasing the same hormones that it's supposed to because it doesn't know that it's in pain anymore. So it can then stop or really slow down your labor. So we do usually the standard is kind of women should get to 5 centimeters before they have an epidural. I've met women that get their epidural at 2 centimeters, and I've met women that get their epidural at kind of 8, 9 centimeters. Not so much here, but, you know, depending on where you're at and how you're coping, depends on what you need to do for yourself.
Can you tell her that you don't want anything?
Yes, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute with regards to birth plans are something that's really important, and that is, you know, a really great tool for you during pregnancy and you as a couple in pregnancy to talk about the things that you want while you're in labor and delivery and what you don't want in labor and delivery. And sometimes the opinions can vary between partners, but it's good to kind of figure that out before you're in the throes of everything. And it's like, what? You want me to do what? No. So it's a good time to start planning ahead for how we're going to do things in our future. With regards to your pain, if you know for sure there's something that you absolutely do not want, say it. And
have a safe word though, so that if you change your mind, it's a if I say this, if I say purple, you need to know that I'm changing my mind. Everything I said before is wrong. Do whatever it takes to make this pain go away. Get this baby out of me. Like, you have to take charge. So you can go into it with it. Look, I know that I don't react well to certain medications. I would really prefer to not do a shot of the Pepidin and Gravol per se. You know, I'll try the gas, and if that's not working, I'd rather just move towards an epidural because I don't want to take the chance of that really spacey high feeling, the drug's potentially affecting the baby. If I speed up and baby is born within a time range where it could potentially impact baby, you know, I don't want to run the risk of not feeling well. So just please don't even offer it. And that's something that you can have put in your birth plan. So with regards to managing the pain at this point, your relaxation is going to come into play, your breathing, rocking, moving, your visualization, music, massage. You may groan, you may want the lights dim, which is very challenging at the hospital. I'll be very honest. The lights are on, it's bright, and that's just how they do things. Now, if they're not kind of in and checking on you and doing different things, you can certainly, you know, ask them, could you turn the lights out? You know, the rooms do have windows, so if it's during the day, you have natural light coming in. And if it's at nighttime, there's, you know, you can put the bathroom light on as opposed to having the big bright lights on. And sometimes that makes it a little bit easier for moms as well. You know, can use the shower again. If you're still at home and coping, you may try the bath for a little bit. A lot of women birth in water, and they don't need any pain management just because when they're out of the water, they're quite uncomfortable. But by getting back in that tub, it's great. Unfortunately, we don't have that option here, but knowing if you are kind of struggling at home and it's not that point, it's like, you know what, I can still manage this, you know, I don't want to rush to the hospital and be stuck there for hours and different things, you know, I'm just going to try taking a bath and see what happens. You know, use that. Being free to move. If they've got you in the bed, if you've gone to the hospital, they've got you on the monitor, it's saying, look, I've been in this bed for a half an hour, you've monitored the baby, like, I need to get up, I'm uncomfortable. Can we detach me from the monitor, or can we move the monitor so that I can use the birth ball, so that I can walk around the room? It's very challenging some of the time with regards to that monitor that they want to put on mummies when they're in labor and delivery, because they want this continuous monitoring of the baby. But statistically, it doesn't actually improve the outcomes. If anything, it can cause more negative outcomes. It can cause a higher risk for cesarean birth or further medical interventions. The best way of monitoring how mummy is doing and baby is intermittent monitoring of the baby. So that can be putting the monitor on for a few minutes, checking, no, baby's heart rate's good, checking it through a couple of contractions, everything's fine, and then taking it back off so that mummies can get up, move around, do different things that help them cope. One of the worst things you can do is get stuck in that bed, because when you stop moving, it just makes things more challenging for baby, and you're going to stop progressing the way that you should be. Conserve your energy though. So when you have been up and about and doing all these various things, if you're starting to get tired, that's a good time to lay down. And that's time you can say, you know, to your midwife or your doctor, look, you know, I'm getting tired, I'm just going to rest for a little bit. Why don't we put the monitor on now, and when I feel ready, I'll get back up and we can take it back off. Let labor take over. What I mean by that is you kind of have to recognize it's happening. You can't stop it, just embrace it. And you will see sometimes with moms that, you know, they are struggling a bit, and it's like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this, we haven't done this, we haven't done that, the kitchen's not done, where are we going to take this baby to, you know. But if you can just, okay, this is it, and accept that this is what's happening, you just have to go with it. It can speed things along and make things a little better. And oh, changing your position. So kind of every 20 minutes to a half an hour, you want to change your position. So, sorry. If you've been in the bed taking a rest, kind of 20 minutes, half an hour, get up. Walk around the room, use the ball maybe. Sit on the ball 20, 30 minutes. It showed in the video sitting on a toilet. You want labor to intensify, you sit on that toilet. You want things to get moving, sit on the toilet. Even more so than the ball. You still open up the same with the ball, but there's a bit of counter pressure from where it's sitting. When you're actually on the toilet, those hips really widen. That baby comes really far down and is pushing on that cervix, and you will have some of the most intense contractions of your potential whole labor. It's pretty amazing how that position really can intensify things. There are birth stools that exist. I don't think they have any at the hospital. I've been trying to find that out, and I just seem to end up not getting the right information that I want. But a birth stool is another great thing to just even sit on, for something alternative if you don't actually want to sit on the toilet, because it's designed so that your bottom is down, and it's a stool that you can actually deliver on. The way it's made, you can literally deliver sitting on the stool. But that's another great thing. So change your positions, keep active, and keep moving around. So when it comes to all of the various things that you're going to experience towards later in pregnancy and through your labor and delivery process with regards to coping, there's lots of professional services to help you with everything. A lot of people will discuss doulas. I think initially I thought a doula was a bit of a, why do I need another person in the labor and delivery room? But if you've had a baby yourself and not had a doula, or you've been in deliveries where there is a doula, you really do see how having that constant support person makes a difference. And it doesn't have to be somebody you hired, like I said. It can be, a sister, a mom, even your partner if you get really in tune with each other. But it's somebody that's there to fully support you. And there's a quote that will often be used with regards to doulas, and it's from a pediatrician. And basically, if a doula was a drug, it would be unethical to not give it to patients. Because having that constant support is huge for a woman. Having a trust, being made to feel safe and confident, and having somebody there that has your back is a huge thing. Because there is a fear of the unknown. And it doesn't matter how many babies you've had, there's still that fear of the unknown. Am I going to be able to handle it better this time than I did last time? Is it going to be more intense, less intense? So having that somebody there. Physical contact is also very, very important to a mom when she's in labor. Just sitting by her bed, not even saying anything, but holding that mom's hand is a huge thing. And when you look at the differences of having a support person, whether it is a trained doula or that added person there that allows the partner to have a little bit of a break, or not so intense interaction, but a partner will hold your hand, the father or whomever your significant other is, hold your hand or touch you about 50% of the time, whereas that hired support person or that other person that you've brought in will have physical contact with you usually about 90 to 95% of the time.
Can you have both?
You can, yes. And it's interesting because sometimes people think, well, I don't really want somebody touching me. Like, I don't. But it kind of takes you back to those very, very primal things as a child. If you're afraid or something's not going right, what do? Mommy, hold my hand. Daddy, hold my hand. And it's just that human contact of, look, there's somebody here that has your back. There's somebody here that's going to help you, protect you, stand up for you, and get you through this process. Our partners can be brilliant, but not always. So just keep it in the back of your mind. Acupuncture is also something that's really great to use, and we do have different people on island that offer acupuncture. Acupuncture can be used to relieve some of the discomforts later in pregnancy. It can be used to help induce labor, and it can help with some of the discomforts that take place in labor. You also have massage, and massage is great during labor and not just from our partners doing something. If you have a friend or you know somebody that actually is a trained massage therapist, they can come in and offer massage to you while you are in labor and come in and out. We also have chiropractic care. Chiropractic can help with the discomforts of pregnancy, but also it can be a way of possibly inducing labor, and it's a more natural way of doing things. So, or if baby's in a wrong position, there are different adjustments that can be tried with the body, manipulations from a chiropractor that can help the baby to actually turn into a better position for delivery. And then you have some women really like the TENS machines, so the sticky pads with the electric current that goes through. Some women find that really helpful and will actually use it in the labor and delivery process. So they'll put it on their lower back or on their hips, different areas, and will use that, and they find great relief from that. We have a lady on Island who has a company called Be Well, and she's a great resource. She does some massage as well as essential oil treatments and different things, and it's a more natural way of doing things, but it's another great resource. And all of the things that I just spoke about, we have available here on Island, which is really nice because sometimes we do think about delivering here in Cayman, and it's like, well, am I going to have access to this that I could use, or am I going to have access to that? And you really don't. But we do have, some really great things here that will help. Now, we spoke briefly about your medications. So the main things when it comes to medication that you're going to be offered is gas. Gas is great. Don't get me wrong. The gas is great. It makes you a little bit high. It doesn't necessarily make you laugh. It doesn't take the pain away, but it makes you a bit lightheaded. If you've ever experienced any narcotic reactions before and you don't like that sensation, then the gas might not be the best thing for you because it really does make you a bit lightheaded and a bit fluffy and a little bit like, okay. But it can really help you get through some of those intense contractions. If that's not working, we spoke about Pethidine and Gravol, and then we get to everybody's favorite, the epidural. There are pros and cons to the epidural. Epidurals sometimes don't work, and that's something else to remember. The epidural can also stop labor, slow labor down, and when things like that happen, what we can end up doing is possibly having to give mummies an IV and stimulate those contractions to come back with the Pitocin in that IV. And so there are pros and cons and risk factors to everything that we do with regards to labor and delivery. So right now, we're going to look at this lovely roadmap, and you guys have a copy of this in your packet. So Penny Simkin is one of the founding childbirth educators, and she has come up with this fabulous little roadmap that kind of explains your way through it and can show how things can change. So it's one way. Once you've gotten pregnant, there's kind of one way out of it. The baby has to come out eventually. So it's a one-way road, but there's various turns and different things that we do to get to our destination of having our baby. So in the early stages, we're going to just have time with our partner. We may cook things. We may eat. We're going to have some, time of rest. We might do some of that visualization of, this is going to be great. I'm just going to relax, enjoy our way. Then we're going to get to that point where, okay, we're going to start, these contractions are starting to come a little more regularly. I'm starting to feel a little bit more. So there's that timing of the contractions. And we're going to start calling for some help. We're going to call our doctor, call the hospital, call our support person, this is what's happening. What do you think? What should I do next? Should I stay home? Should I get ready to make my way to the hospital, birthplace, go from there? So then we've kind of reached that 3-centimeter mark. It's a good point. Things are moving. We're going to start having to relax, breathe, and focus. So it's some of these various things that we've discussed doing to try to get us a bit further along into that labor process. Shower, might be doing some massage, that labor dance, and I've heard it said before, as soon as the childbirth educator, the doula, the midwife, the doctor said about slow dancing our way through labor, they lost me. But you've got physical contact with somebody that is supporting you. You're able to open your hips. You're able to sway. It's not so much a romantic dance. It's just emotion, and that's how we use it. It takes you back to the sock hop days when you were in middle school. You got your hands on the shoulder, and your butt's out as far away as it can be, and the guy's trying to reach down and kind of get a hold of your butt and pull you in closer. That's kind of what your labor dance is. It's not so much, a choreographed dance per se. Might use the birth ball, and then hopefully, we can keep going on the yellow brick road of labor. However, we may have gotten to a point where, you know what, I just can't handle this discomfort. This is not working for me, and this is not how I saw my labor and delivery going. Like, I want my epidural. So when we look at having the epidural, this is when you go onto what we call your paved highway. Because, well, if the epidural works, the pain goes away, and, you know, it's pretty much smooth sailing until baby comes out. So what is going to happen? Here in the hospital, what they do is they will call the anesthetist. If you are going through the government system, it will be the anesthetist that's on call. If you're doing private, you can use the government one, or you can specifically choose who you want. And even if you are using the government system, if you have private insurance, I believe you do have that right to have a private anesthetist as well. Pros and cons to either. It may be a matter of, you know, if you have friends here or know people that, you know, are doctors or have connections or know different anesthetists, they might say, look, no, if you're going to have an epidural, you really want to try and get this doctor in, you know, and approaching them ahead of time saying, look, you know, I'm going to be having a baby. I may want my epidural. Would you take me on type thing? And that can make things a little easier. But they call the anesthetist. Anesthetist comes. They set up a big tray. Unfortunately, I don't have one to show you everything that's in it, but you'll see a little bit of it in the video. And what they will do is ask how things are going, and they'll get you into position. And usually position is that you're sitting on the side of the bed, and they'll put your feet on a chair or a stool in front of you, and they'll give you a pillow, and they will get you to sit forward and kind of round, kind of over your tummy and over your legs. And that's so that your lower back is kind of pushed out a bit more towards them, so it's easier to access that epidural space.
Can you do that when you have your belly, though?
Yeah, well, your legs would actually be down lower, and you just kind of round over top of your belly. Sometimes it is harder for mummies to get into that position, especially depending on how big the belly is, where the baby kind of is situated, and how uncomfortable those contractions are. It can be a bit stressful for the mummy because, especially if she's having a hard time coping with the contractions, you have to sit really, really still. So another time when your breathing, relaxing, and coping mechanisms becomes really important is if you are going to have that epidural, because you do need to be still. Somebody's putting a needle in your back. It's not a time you want to be wiggling and jiggling. So they will come, they will set everything up, they will drape your back, they will clean it with some cleaning solutions. The first needle will go in, and it will be, as we usually say, a bit of a bee sting. So you'll get that poke and the sting initially of the medication starting to go in to do some freezing, and then you'll get a lot of pressure. And usually, other than that initial injection, there's no pain. Once they have got into what they are trying to get into, which is your epidural space, you may get a shock sensation, and when that shock happens, it also lets them know that they're in the right spot. They inject medication. If they were doing a spinal block for a C-section, they would just inject the medication and then take the needle out and leave you frozen. Whereas with an epidural, it's a continuous infusion. So there's a little catheter, little plastic tube, basically, that's threaded into the back and is left in there, and it's taped in place. And they have a continuous infusion of the medication running so that the freezing continues to stay. So once the epidural is in, there it is, everybody's happy. They will usually also put a bladder catheter in, and you can request that they do that after you have been frozen, as opposed to having a catheter put in while you're not frozen. And the reason for that is because you won't be able to feel if your bladder is full, so you won't know to empty your bladder, and you can't get up and move around. So that's why they do that, to make it a little bit easier. So then you just rest and wait. When you rest and wait.
Can you rest with your?
Yeah, you can lay right back. It's all secured to the back. It's flush up against the skin. It's fine. So you can lay back. Now, one of the things that will help is, you know, if you are doing that resting and waiting, is if your partner is there, a support person, or even having your midwife, you know, just help you to adjust yourself a little bit. You can't really move depending on how frozen you have become from the medication. But even, you know, just kind of having somebody kind of help you move your hips over and kind of lean up on one hip a little bit more it just helps to have some movement so that things can continue to progress.
And do you lose all feeling?
Some of the time you do, and it's usually kind of lower rib cage down.
Is that a bit scary though?
Some people do find it a bit uncomfortable. Some people, if it comes up a little bit higher, it makes them feel kind of like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to breathe? And so they'll ask, where are you feeling from? Sometimes it will only work on one side. Sometimes it doesn't fully take the pain away. It's all varied, so it's not a guarantee removal of pain. But it certainly does, in some instances, completely remove all pain and will make things more comfortable.
But then you need to be laying down on the bed for sure.
Yes, because you can't feel in your legs, so you can't walk.
Yeah.
Now, in some places they have things called walking epidurals, but even a walking epidural, you're not up walking around. You are just not completely frozen from head to toe. So as the time passes, after a certain amount of time, unless you're starting to feel a pressure like, wait a minute, I think this baby's trying to come out, the midwife will intermittently check you to see how far you're dilating. And when you get to fully dilated, they will either decrease the epidural, so to allow the pain of the contractions to come back so you can feel where to push, or you'll just start pushing. And then depending on how things are going, you will either be able to push baby out, or they'll have to decrease the epidural so that you can feel to push, or there'll be some assistance. So there's a couple of different positions. You can kind of use what we call a squat bar, and that's to kind of pull yourself in a little bit more of an upright position. They can incline the head of the bed even though you are frozen, so you are in a more upright position, which will certainly help with regards to aiding the whole labor and delivery process. And then baby is born.
How long does it take, more or less, since they put the injection?
Everybody's different. Some mummies will, kind of be 4, 5, 6 centimeters, kind of struggling, haven't really kind of progressed in an hour or so, or a couple of hours, and because they're tense, by the time they get the epidural in and get mummy laid back down, she can be fully dilated before the medication even has a chance to go in, because just that getting up, sitting in position, and sometimes it's just that psychological response that happens of, that pain's going to go away. Oh my gosh. You can start to relax a little bit, even though it's uncomfortable, because that help is coming. That medication is going to start taking that pain away. Other times it can take hours after it's gone in, especially if the epidural goes in, it really freezes mummy, and she's not having any pain whatsoever. The hormones that are being released throughout labor and delivery are there for a reason. The pain is there for a reason. The pain actually has a purpose. And with the various pain receptors that we have in the body, makes different hormones release at different times, and those hormones all impact how our labor and delivery is progressing. So if you stop having pain, you will stop releasing some of the hormones, and it can stop the labor completely. And that's when they need to re-stimulate you with either decreasing the freezing or putting an IV of Pitocin up.
Is there any point, like, okay, we've been here 4 hours, not working, we need to do a C-section? Can they pass from one, like, being natural to...
With regards to having the epidural in, or if
So
not,
at which point they decide, okay, you do need to go through a C-section?
depending on how the labor is progressing and what your practitioner or your healthcare provider believes will impact when you would go for C-section. So if you were not coping with the pain of labor, you had an epidural put in place, and 2 or 3 hours go by, they come and check to see how far you're dilated, and there's been no change. They'll tell you that, and they'll give you the option, say, look, maybe those contractions are not as steady. We should try to either decrease the epidural or put some Pitocin up to see if we can get those contractions kind of coming back a little stronger to get you to start dilating again. You'll make a decision as a group at that point, and then they'll give you another time frame when they would check you again. If there's still been no change, depending on how mommy's coping and what she wants, then they may encourage you to go for C-section. So it all depends on how the progression is going and how you're coping. Now, some of the time when the epidural does stop or slow that labor and they put the Pitocin up, the challenge is that baby does not always respond well because it is a synthetic hormone. It's the same hormone that's in our body, but it's a synthetic version, and it makes the uterus contract usually a lot stronger than what the natural hormone does. And sometimes the baby does not tolerate that. And so when baby does not tolerate that, they will start having some stress responses. So it can be their heart rate is dipping. And at times like that, it will be, okay, well, if we need to use the Pitocin to keep this mummy, to keep her labor active and get her dilating, and it's not working and baby's not tolerating it, okay, are we going to have to stop the Pitocin or are we going to go for C-section? So there are other factors, to consider with regards to the epidural other than just, I'm not progressing, I'm not coping, need to go for C-section, or, is baby being, stressed out because it's, more intense for baby as well. So that's the epidural aspect of it. Then we also have another detour if we're having some back labor, and back labor is all kinds of fun. Very uncomfortable, unfortunately, for mummies. So you're going to need to be in different positions that can really help with coping with back labor. Being mobile while in back labor is one of the best things that you can do, because often by being mobile, it allows baby to move within your pelvis and turn into a better position to deliver, which will then hopefully alleviate a lot of that back labor. So draping over your birthing ball, it can be kneeling down on the floor, or it can be having the ball on a higher surface. It can be just leaning over the bed or leaning over the back of a chair, just doing some different things to kind of pull that baby forward to get that pressure off the back. The TENS machine is another great thing if you are having back labor for some mummies. They swear by it. One-legged leg up on a chair, kind of a lunge position, seems to work really well, and it can even be done in a squatting position with one leg up. It just opens the hips up a little bit more and can allow for more movement in that pelvis for the baby. Shower in the water, that hip squeeze can also help. If you end up having back labor, I'm sorry, there's no magic fix necessarily for it. It is uncomfortable, but being able to use some of the different positions, usually always kind of forward to kind of get baby off that back, and being mobile can help things move and shift. So that's your detour. If you're able to just keep going, managing, doing some various different activities, and kind of just stay on the straight and narrow, hopefully we kind of get to that 8 centimeter mark. And when we get to that 8 centimeter mark, then we're going into what we term as transition. And that's your last stage kind of before you are pushing. And when you get to that 8 centimeters, you're going to potentially be quite warm, can have some shake, so you might actually be cool. So your temperature can fluctuate, potentially be irritable, and your transition phase is very fast. Like it's, I think it's 20 minutes. Yeah, up to an hour. Sorry, I lied. But it's fast and furious usually, so it's, it's a little more intense, and women can feel quite out of control. But then you kind of make that last turn, and you've reached your 10 centimeters. Now, something that's important for mummies to know is that just because you're 10 centimeters dilated doesn't mean you have to push. If you're having the urge to push, that's different. But if you're 10 centimeters dilated, your doctor or your midwife has checked, and it's like, oh, you're 10 centimeters, you can start pushing now. If you don't have the urge to push, you're just going to tire yourself out. You can certainly do some pushing to see how baby moves down, but it is more effective if you're actually having that urge to push. So
even with having the epidural, you can have that physical urge. It's like, because as the baby's head comes down, it reaches a certain point where it pushes on a nerve where you don't have the physiological control to not bear down. If you're going to the bathroom, there's a point where it's like, okay, I can kind of stop. I don't need to go. I can wait till I get to a bathroom. And then there's a, oh my gosh, I have to go to the bathroom right now type urge. And that's your urge that you're going to get when that baby is at that point. You physiologically cannot hold back that urge and that desire to bear down and push that baby out. Some women, when they get to 10 centimeters, they actually go through a resting phase. So their contractions may actually slow down a bit and be a little bit more spaced out. They may not be quite as intense. They won't necessarily have that urge at that point to push. And that's a resting phase. Some women never get that, and some women actually do have it, especially if you've had a bit of a longer labor, or even if it's been a really fast, intense labor. It's just that little like, I need to catch my breath. Your body needs to kind of catch up with what's going on. It might be 1 or 2 contractions, or you could kind of have up to a half an hour or so of this resting period. And if that's the case, rest. When the urge comes, we push baby out. And then you have this lovely, beautiful little squished up cookie person. And they're fabulous. So this is just, I found it a really great teaching tool because it kind of gives you your basic breeze of actually going through what a natural labor is going to be like.
It's the most painful part then before you even start pushing the baby out.
The pushing doesn't. That's the easy part.
So, yeah.
It's labor. Labor is the uncomfortable part. Pushing is not the uncomfortable part.
Yeah, when she gets to that point.
It's like everything is easy. But it's
It's like the worst before that point.
if you jam your finger, what do you usually do? You grab it and put pressure on it. When you're having a contraction and you're pushing into that pain. So you're almost causing a double reaction, and so it's a different pain. When you're just in labor and the contractions are there, you're just having pain. Whereas when you can push, you have something to do with the pushing. And stuff is moving and changing, and you don't have pain necessarily in your vagina or in your bottom during the labor process. It's pain in your abdomen, and that's what's important to remember. When you're pushing, you may not have pain in your vagina or in your bottom until your baby is at that crowning point. So don't be alarmed, if you think, I'm not having any pain here, like I'm having pain here, like why am I having pain there? Because it's all different responses and reactions.
Carry on.
Alright, let's do this. I keep doing them in short bursts because I'm just waiting for the computer to completely freeze.